All right, welcome back to another episode of Born to Be Great. How we doing, Nick?
Good, man. Excited to have you on, Chris.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you guys.
Awesome. Well, a little bit about our guest today, and then we'll get him to introduce himself. But Chris is a new friend, but a good friend. He's an entrepreneur. He's a former college athlete. Pro athlete. He's a family man, and also a new author. If y'all can see my screen, author of the Chairleader, Lead Without Limits. We're going to talk about that today as well. So, Chris Malleo, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I'm gracious to be here. It's awesome. I'm excited to talk with both you guys.
Cool, man. Well, just for the audience's sake, can you just tell us a little bit about your upbringing and probably start with your football career, and then we'll transition into the book. So, can you tell us a little bit about how that went on and why you decided to write the book?
Absolutely, yeah. So, grew up in New Jersey in a small town called Manasquan. It's a coastal shore town, very very tiny town, year round. Beach town. Everyone who's there lives there year round, and so it's a pretty special place. In a lot of ways, like really unique relationships, and so something that place that felt like home to me growing up. Went to a high school right up the street called Wall High School, and played great football there. Played in some really high level games against some high level competition, and had a great run as a high school player. It was a 3-year starter. But I was incredibly young, as a high school senior. I was 17. I turned 17 years old going into May of my senior year, and so decided to do a postgraduate year and played at a school called the Hun School after that, which is outside Princeton, New Jersey, and ended up becoming the player of the year. Had a fantastic year, had a multitude of scholarship offers, and just was being recruited as both an athlete and a quarterback. And so made a decision, wanted to go to Northwestern. I had, a family that really valued education. It was just a fundamental part of, who we were and what we valued. And so got an opportunity to go play high level football at Northwestern while we're getting a great degree. But, the things didn't necessarily transpire exactly how we kind of thought they would have when we got there. It was, like I said, recruited as a quarterback, and as a redshirt freshman was the backup to a guy who ended up being an NFL player for a number of years. But during my time playing, I was a big athlete. I was 6'3". I was 240 pounds, and I was a big quarterback. And it was, this was a different time where this was before Tim Tebow, and so in some respects, guys didn't know what to do with me because I was strong, I was fast, I could run, all those types of things. And our head coach actually at the time, Randy Walker, had a heart attack, and they brought in a new offensive coordinator, new quarterbacks coach, and so those guys had a different vision for what they wanted to do offensively, and I didn't necessarily fit in the mold of where they thought things were going to go. So I ended up getting moved to play linebacker and tight end. I was, on kickoff team, blocking punts, all those types of things, doing whatever I could to help the football team win. Being an unselfish teammate, being focused on, what our team needed, because I cared so much about my friends, my brothers, the success of Northwestern football. But it was hard. It was hard, man. I wrote in the book, my heart was at playing quarterback because I knew the talent that I had. And I would stand in these stadiums, on Saturdays to 80 to 100,000 people, and I felt really lonely. And so, something that was unique for me at the time, to think about what I had to go through, because I'd be incredibly unselfish. And it was despite all the things that I wanted for myself. And so when I got done playing in college, one of my coaches had pulled me aside. He was actually a scout for a long time in the NFL, and he said, "Hey, look, like, I've been around this game a long time. You can throw a football, you can play pro football, you can play quarterback." And he goes, "You should pursue it." And he encouraged me to, and so I did. We've got one life to live, right? And so I'd rather go out there and fall on my face than live an entire life with regret. Moved out to Phoenix, Arizona. I had some good friends who I met during the process, and they let me sleep on their couch and gave me a bedroom in Chandler, Arizona, and started training with some of the best trainers in the world. And my first year out there, I was playing in a semi-professional football league because I needed to get back to playing football. So that's how humble this moment was for how humble I had to humble myself in this moment to go play football in a semi-professional league. I was just got done playing Division I football. I had all these big dreams, and I'm playing semi-pro football. But it was one of the best things that ever happened to me because it allowed me to start falling in love with football again. Because everyone who was out there was playing just for the joy of it. And from that, I was playing quarterback and starting to get better and improve. And just like riding a bike, I got back onto it and got a tryout. I was invited to an open trial for the Canadian Football League, and really unique situation, but was offered a contract from that open trial in the Canadian Football League. So the team I was trying out for was the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and their general manager who was running the Rough Riders at the time. He pulled me aside. He offered me a contract right then and there on the spot. He said, "We're going to offer you a contract today." And he goes, "And also, I'm no one knows this. I'm about to be named the head coach of the Toronto Argonauts, and we're going to offer you a contract with the Toronto Argonauts." So I went from having no professional opportunities to suddenly two of the more premier teams in the Canadian Football League. But I was like, this opportunity and this process was so foreign to me. I didn't have an agent. I didn't have anyone negotiate on my behalf. My brother, who was a Cornell graduate, actually stepped in and just pretended to be my de facto agent. And so it was able to help me negotiate a contract. Ended up going to Toronto and I had a great camp, had a great opportunity with guys like Ken Dorsey, who has played University of Miami, was a Heisman Trophy finalist, national champion, and coaches the NFL today. A guy named Jabron Handon, who played and was drafted and played in the NFL for the Washington Commanders and the Buffalo Bills. So a number of different guys that were out there who were, really, really talented. And I would say I probably was the most talented of those guys. I really threw the cover off the ball. Ken was an amazing support. And I made it to the last round of cuts. I got let go. And I remember they just were like, "Hey, look, like this has nothing to do with talent. This is just inexperience. And like, if you keep going, like you're going to have a shot." And so I did. I continued to pursue it. But it was a really unique time because right as I was cut, my mom had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, stage 4. And so I really had to put my football career on hold for a little bit to help assist with her and be a good son and do the things that were necessary to help my family in those times, in those moments. So, here I was on the brink of playing high level professional football. And then all of a sudden my mom's diagnosed with cancer. And so for 2 years, I essentially didn't play football again. And that's a massive window to not play. And at this time I had an agent, and he called me and he said, "Look, Chris, like if you want to do this, you've got a shot. You still have a small window, but you got to go play somewhere." And I went out and I played in this league called the Indoor Football League for a team in Pennsylvania called the Reading Express. I would drive 2 hours every single day to go to practice because, I was going back and forth between my mom's treatments and then practice and weight room, all this stuff. It was a wild time.
Wow.
And that was the level of commitment that I'd had. And so, ended up having a great season in Reading and played really, really high level football. And then off of that, got an invite to the NFL to go to the New York Giants. And so it was an amazing moment for me. Just if you look at the career arc, it's unheard of for a guy, essentially the most important position in all of sports, to not have played it at the collegiate level in a meaningful way. And then then here I am on the precipice of being with the New York Giants. And so didn't make the Giants. They, I said I had a cup of coffee. They ended up cutting me. They had guys like David Carr and Eli Manning and Sage Rosenfeld. All three guys were starters in the NFL. But like the fact that I had been invited there, that I had made it, in itself was an accomplishment and something to this day that I'm pretty proud of because I never gave up on my dream.
I love it. That's why, I think that's why me and Nick are boys, because I love that about him, just never giving up. And I think that's why this conversation is going to be so awesome, because you guys have so many similarities within y'all's story. Nick, what do you think about that, man? I mean, does anything
Yeah,
resonate from
man, I think you love football a lot more than I did, man. It was that's a crazy story. I kind of evaluating my last year, like I never wanted to like go to Canada or play. Like I think even somebody had hit me up like for I remember it was like USFL, after I was cut from the Cowboys like later in the year, and my mind was just so gone from football at that point. My body was so beat up, and I had some traction in business, so I pursued that full time. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of similarities. I had like an up and down career at Arizona State. Didn't get much traction like outside of special teams and like special short yard situations till probably my last year, and then I played a lot at Losing Lafayette. But my kind of battle was like COVID, and I had they canceled pro days, and I was the whole crazy. And Justin, I don't even think you know this. Like I had torn my hamstring like the last season of in the bowl game, so I couldn't even have played or really had a good pro day that following March. Um, but yeah, COVID happened and it, pretty much killed all my opportunity, but it gave my body another year to heal. And it was a whole mental kind of battleground over that year. And there's a lot of stuff that happened. But yeah, found a way to, get to the Cowboys as a free agent and play a season there. But yeah, yeah, you must have really loved football to go up to Canada to play indoor league, even to switch positions. I know you learned a lot about yourself and kind of who you became in the process is more important because not a lot of people can do tough shit like that, particularly with all the stuff that was happening in your personal life. What was kind of the internal or motivating factor for you to keep pursuing, you know, football?
Yeah, it's a great question. I just loved it. I just really did. I just felt so at home on a football field, and it was something that I felt so connected to the sport, and for those reasons, I was like, I've got to pursue this. This is, as I mentioned, like we get one shot at this thing,
Yeah,
and I like I knew like I wanted to go out sliding down the mountain, right? Like I wanted to, that was like I was gonna climb, and if I fell on the way down, I was going down sliding. I wasn't looking for a slow descent, and that was tough. Like I mean, because you can imagine how many doors slam in your face, right? Like
yeah,
it
yeah.
just along the way, and how many people didn't believe in what I had seen in myself. And like this isn't just my football story. Like think about all the things like Justin, think about your experience in business. How many people didn't take you serious, right? Like how many doors right?
Yeah.
How many doors were closed on your face early on? And like you have to have this like unwavering internal belief in your vision and like who you are and what your goals are, that it just doesn't matter. Like the outside circumstances are completely irrelevant because you're just in a way you have to be like delusional and psychotic. But the people who are
Facts,
delusional or psychotic are the people who change the world, right? Like all of a sudden they do something
facts.
amazing and everyone either going to attribute to luck or whatever it might be. And the reality is it's just like it's that belief and it's that persistence. And so I just knew I had that in me. Like that's just how I'm wired. And I had to go for it. And so, that was it. It was the only way. It's like a dog seeing a rabbit. Like that dog's not chasing the rabbit. Like that's how I'm wired. I gotta go.
I love that. I think it's crazy because I honestly think, well, Chris, what you just said, like, having that delusional belief in yourself, I think that's a superpower nowadays because
Mm.
I look back at my own life and I think back to like, moments of doubt or whatever. And I'm just like, I didn't believe in myself as much as I probably could have or should have. And I needed someone outside of me to like speak that into me. And I think that was like super important for me. But like, I honestly think that those people that don't really need that for the most part, that's a superpower. And as I developed that more and, more internally myself, things got a lot better in my life. But, being resilient when, whether it's, business, sports, whatever. Yeah, I had plenty of, I mean, everyone's got that, those moments of when, you get those doors shut in your face and, it's not going the way you want. But those are the moments like where it's like, what are you made of really? Like, are you going to, let that pain paralyze you? You're going to let it like, propel you to the next level. So yeah, dude, that's a freaking bomb right there you just dropped, Chris. I love that. Okay, so now I want to get into the book a little bit, but before the book, obviously, a lot of our mutual friends here, John Gordon, he's an important piece of this. Chris, can you just talk a little bit about how you and John met and then how this sort of came to be, and then let's get into the book.
Yeah, for sure. So was fortunate that I attended one of John's events called The Day with John and Ed Milet together down
Oh,
here in
let's
Palm
go.
Beach Beach. Yeah, it was a great event. And the day before the event, they had a VIP session, and it was pickleball at the yards. And so I just went over to play pickleball at the yards, and John happened to be there. And we kind of battled a few times, and John had kind of seen me run around and play pickleball and my athleticism, and he pulled me aside and he was like, "Hey, like, this is cool. Like you like what you live down here. Like we should play pickleball." And so we exchanged information, had an amazing weekend, just at his event with him and Ed. And it was awesome. It was special. Like John is such a, yeah, as you know, Justin, he's such a special person. Like John, his wife, Catherine, I mean, all his family, Cole, his son, like his daughter, Jade, they're awesome people. And he just has been so amazing to me as a friend, as a mentor, and so we started playing pickle regularly, and it just that's like how our friendship built. And the amazing and cool story, I think this speaks to John more than anything, is, and we can get into the Chairleader too in a minute. I pitched the Chairleader to John to write it. So I originally didn't want to write the book. I wanted John to write the book.
Mm.
And imagine John Gordon writing a book called The Chairleader, and like the story and like what this is. Like, he'll sell 1 million copies in a minute. And I remember he had me sitting on a bench. I gave him an elevator pitch on it, and he goes, "This book is incredible. This story is amazing." He goes, "The title, I love the title." He goes, "But I can't write this book." He goes, "This is your book. You have to write this book, Chris." And he put it right back on me. And in a way, like, I didn't want him to put it back on me. But he gave me the responsibility, because he's like, "This is your story. And we'll talk about it in a minute, but this is Frankie's story. Like, you guys have to share this." And so I always credit him for that, because I just think that was incredible, so unselfish. Like, a lot of people, I think, in that moment may have been like, "Yeah, let's do this. Like, let's write this book." Because this is going to be an easy sell. And John didn't do that. In essence, he did the opposite. He empowered me.
I love that. That's so cool. And yeah, no, that's how I got to meet you through John, and I met John through Nick. So it's coming full circle here on the podcast. So
No doubt.
I love it, man. So yeah, dude. So yeah, tell everyone why the Chairleader? What's it about? What can we learn?
Yeah. So Chairleader it's an extraordinary true story, man. After I got done playing football, I was really in this like weird place in my life, because one, so much of like who I identified as was as an athlete, right? Like, and so much of, like, if we really think about it, our identities are tied to what we do, not necessarily who we are. And so
Mm-hmm.
in my particular case, I was so focused on who I was as an athlete, and I was really insecure when I wasn't that thing, right? When I was no longer Chris Malleo, the athlete, the quarterback, the pro football, like, then who and what am I, right? And my mom had just passed away, and I was struggling with my identity, struggling with who I was. I was really, really insecure. And that insecurity, it creates and breeds selfishness. And I was selfish. And so I decided to get into coaching to try to like fall in love with this game again, and really appreciate football. And I had a cousin who actually is a college coach now. He coaches at Dartmouth University, and he reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, look, I've got a job. I just took over this high school football program. It's in Connecticut, in a town called Cheshire, Connecticut. It's a town called a school called Cheshire Academy. Would love for you to come." And so I did. I went down there and started coaching, and like all of a sudden, like getting around the guys and helping them and like watching them grow, it just made me fall in love. And I started coaching. So what helped him at Cheshire, and then all of a sudden he killed it at that program. Got an opportunity to coach at a school called the Lawrenceville School, which is where Joakim Noah went to school, and is one of the best schools in the country. It's a phenomenal place. It's in New Jersey. So I took over. We took over. I was the offensive coordinator there. We had an amazing run, had some incredible players come through, and turned the program around like overnight. And up the road was a school called the Petty School, and the Petty School was a rival of Lawrenceville's, but it's hard to call them a rival when we were beating them all the time, like pretty consistently, and there were no challenge to it. There was no challenge to it, and so Petty had really been in a tough spot. They were forfeiting games. They didn't have enough high level participation, and they were looking for a head coach. And so I decided that I was going to put my name in the hat. They had hired me, shortly after. And, if I'm being really honest, like, guys, like I took that job, and it was all about me. Like, I wanted to be the focus of the program. I wanted to be the name that was in the paper. I wanted people to talk about me as a football coach, as a leader, as all the things that I was doing, because I was still selfish and I was insecure. Like, I had this like failed football career chip on my shoulder. And so I was trying to fill that void with coaching and success in coaching. And so I get to the program at Petty, and in year one, we turn it around like right away. And we were on the brink of a championship. And I just remember thinking like, okay, like I'm going to take this thing and elevate it. Now, what was unique about the opportunity at Petty was I had taken over late in the year. And so I had to inherit the entire old staff. So, you've got a program that's floundering, and the only thing that they changed really was the head coach. And so the entire old staff, remains. And so, anytime you're trying to shift and change a culture, when like remnants of the old, the old guard remain, it's difficult. And so I went to the athletic director. I said, "Hey, look, and this athletic director was awesome. He was incredible. He empowered me as a leader. His name was Jason Baisden." I said, "Jason, I need to hire some guys who understand what, my vision, my goals, all these types of things for the program." And he said, he was great. He said, "I'll give you a budget. go out and hire 3. It's great. So I created a job posting, put it out there in the world, and got incredible resumes. I mean, just the talent, the coaching talent that came back to me through these resumes was unbelievable, and it actually got me really excited. I was like, okay, great. If I can add 3 really talented coaches with some of the talent that we have coming back and some of the talent that's coming up, like I just know we can turn this into one of the best programs in the state, and I know I'll become one of the best coaches in the state in turn, and everyone will talk about me. And so I go through the interview process, or excuse me, before we go through the interview process, there was an email. I'm interviewing people on a Monday, but the Friday before that Monday, I'm sitting in my house, 8:30 at night. I get an email from someone right as I'm about to take the job posting down, and the email says coaching interests. And I remember thinking at the time, this is really late to be, reaching out to me about an interview process that's supposed to happen on a Monday. And this young man had reached out and he was expressing his interest in coaching. He said he had just graduated from Villanova University and he had had been a student assistant with Jay Wright on the men's basketball team. He had no football coaching experience whatsoever, but was really interested in joining our staff. He had known what we were trying to do. And if I'm being honest, guys, like at the time, I remember thinking like, there is no chance I'm hiring this guy. Like not one, he has no football coaching experience. His resume, it pales in comparison to some of the other resumes I've received. But I'm going to bring him in because he coached with Jay Wright, who's a national champion basketball coach. And I want to ask him what things they were doing as a part of the culture and program with Villanova so that I can just take that and apply it to our program. I was just looking to pick his brain. So I go through the interviews, and this young man who had emailed me, his name is Frankie, because he had emailed me last, he was scheduled last on the interview day. So I go through the interviews all on that Monday. And I get to essentially the second to last interview, and we're running a little bit behind. And I look out my clear glass doors in my office, and I'm ready to go out and get Frankie. And I see an adult who's looks like he's in his 60s. He's got wispy gray hair. He's got a visor on. He's got a floral shirt. He almost looks like he's heading to a Jimmy Buffett concert. I remember thinking at the time as I'm walking out there, this does not look like somebody who just graduated from Villanova University. Far from it, frankly. And so I go out and I extend my hand, and this gentleman, he recognized I was a little bit confused. He said, "Coach Malleo, my name's Tim." I remember thinking right away, like, the guy who emailed me, his name is Frankie. Why is Tim here? And he said, "I'm Frankie's driver." And I thought, Frankie's driver? And right behind Tim, a young man wheels out in a wheelchair, a motorized wheelchair. He's got nonverbal cerebral palsy. He has a soft jaw, so he's drooling from his chin. His hands are affixed because of spasming. His legs are Velcroed into his wheelchair because they kick so much through the spasms. And he had a plastic alphabet board affixed to his wheelchair in which he would manually take his index finger and point to the letter that he wanted you to look at and read over his shoulder so you could understand what he's saying. And so here I am thinking I'm about to interview an able-bodied coach, right? I had just written 3 names on a list from all the interviews I had done, thinking I've got the guys that I want to hire. Like, it's done. Like, I already knew that I had my 3 names. And so now I'm staring at somebody who is far from what I assumed was capable of coaching football. Like, in a way, I was almost, my first thought was like, why is this guy even here? Like, we're talking about coaching high-level football. I'm trying to take this program and turn it to the number 1 program in the state. And I don't have time for somebody in a wheelchair who can't speak. And so I gave him the respect of an interview, and it was incredible, right? The 2.5 hours that I spent with Frankie, it fundamentally changed who I was in that moment. My heart changed, my soul changed, my mind changed. It was an incredible opportunity for me to go from this selfish person to realizing, like, man, look at all the things that I have in my life. As this person sitting across from me is radiating such joy for life, and I wasn't living to the best of my ability by any stretch of the means. Like, if anything, it was just I was so myopic in my vision of what I wanted to do that I forgot about the reason that I got into coaching in the first place. And so we had the interview. It was about 2.5 hours because that's how long it took to communicate with Tim, his driver, reading over his shoulder and telling me what Frankie was trying to communicate and type to me. And so as we're on our way out the office, I still remember, guys, like I had all these doubts. Like I was like, how is this going to work, right? Like, how am I going to hire this guy? How's the school going to respond? How are the players going to respond? How's he going to communicate? How's he going to get at the games? Like, who's going to be, what's insurance? Like all these issues, right? Like had insane limiting beliefs surrounding this guy. But as we talked about earlier, right? Like he had this delusional belief in himself that I didn't see, right? Like all the same doors that had been closed on me, I was now closing on someone else. And I'll never forget, as we're walking out of the office, I was just thinking of a way to be like, hey, we'll be in touch. Like one of the old, like, we'll be in touch. And he wheels around his wheelchair, like I said, motorized. He wheels around his wheelchair, and Tim's reading over his shoulder, and Frankie types, and Tim reads it, and he says, I know I can help you. And he wheeled away. And it was such an emotional moment for me. I had to go into my office. I had to close the shades. I had to close the doors, and I had to cry because there was just so much of a release. There was just so much like I said, go back to there's so much I had to be grateful for. And this young man, like I wanted to almost scream to him, like tell him that life was unfair, that he was amazing, and that he was talented. And I didn't know what to do. And the crying seemed like the only logical response at the time. And so I had an internal conversation with myself. I went home that night and I emailed the athletic director my 3 names, and Frankie Kanivi made the list, and I had ended up hiring him as one of my 3 coaches. And what transpired during the 4 years that we coached together was absolutely incredible. And, obviously we'll get into it.
That is so cool. And wow, shout out to Frankie for the belief in himself. That's amazing. But yeah, I don't even really know what to say to that. It's just like, I mean, also shout out to you for, being open to that and having that self-awareness within yourself and, seeing the vision that, I could do something here with Frankie. That's super cool. But wow, Nick, what do you think about that, man?
Yeah, I mean, getting me, emotional. I mean, what a warrior, man. I'm kind of at the edge of my seat wanting to hear, how it
Yeah.
all unfolded.
Yeah, let's get into it. Keep going, Chris.
Yeah, for sure. So, so pretty incredible. Like I said, we end up, we end up coaching together for 4 years. And so we end up taking that program from 0 to number 1 small school prep school in the country. We sent 48 kids in those 4 years to play Division I football on full scholarships. 4 of them are now currently in the NFL. And so, we won 2 championships. Like I said, we were finished number 1 in the country. And so like the on-field product was incredible. But what really was the amazing piece was the transformation that occurred between myself, our coaches, our players, when we hired Frankie. And I think this moment is in the book, but one of the most powerful moments for me was when I introduced Frankie to the team, because I was so concerned about like, how's the school going to handle this hire? How's the team? How's the community? Like, how are we going to make this work? How are the players going to respond? Like, we had some tough players. And we had this really awesome routine that we would do before all of our meetings, and we would break meetings, start meetings. It was just really, really cool routine. So we had called it our 3 claps. So if like Justin Block were to come speak to Petty Football, we didn't really, we wanted there to be essentially a focus on everything we did, that there was like an intentionality behind it. We didn't just want to do anything from an obligatory sense. So if you came and spoke to Petty Football, instead of like guys clapping for you at the end, someone would stand up, and this was like the greatest form of respect we could give you. Someone would stand up and they would say, give me 1. And everyone in unison, if someone heard give me 1, everyone in unison would clap once. And then they would say, give me 2. And then they would go boom, boom, 2 claps. And then they'd say 3 claps, ready, ready. And then it would be in unison. Everyone would go clap, clap, clap. And that was the greatest in our program. If someone gave you 3 claps, that was the greatest form of respect. It was like almost like a hoorah in the military, right? Or a salute. And so we had this team meeting, and I wanted to introduce Frankie to the team. I wanted to introduce all of our new coaches to the team. And it was right after like the season, and the guys were in the weight room, the winter, all that other stuff. And so we had this awesome team room in which we had all our team meetings and film and all this other stuff. And it was a tiered auditorium. It was a pretty special place. And so I'll never forget, like the guys were buzzing with energy because it was right before Christmas break. Like everyone's about to go home and just enjoy themselves. And we just finished an awesome workout, and I could literally hear the noise like reverberating through the building. And I called this meeting to introduce our coaches, and I opened up the door to the team meeting room, and Frankie wheeled in, and I was hit with a wall of silence when he wheeled in. Because for so many of these guys, they had never really experienced somebody who navigated life like Frankie. This is their first exposure to it at all. And so, I talked a little bit about this in the book. The average human speaks about 6,000 to 8,000 words a day. Because of Frankie's limitations and how he can communicate, he is able to communicate about 200 to 300. So think about how special, you don't have time for fluff when you can only communicate 200 to 300 words a day. And everything you say, every word, every sentence, every syntax, every period matters. And so Frankie wheels to the center of the room. I introduce him, tell the team, who he is, what his role is going to be, what he's about. And he simply types, "I'm excited to get to know all of you," and which I read over his shoulder. And I think it really resonated with the team because in that moment, one of our biggest, toughest, strongest players from the back stands up and he goes, "Give me one, give me two, 3 claps, ready, ready." And it was boom, boom, boom. And those claps resonated throughout the entire school. It was incredible. And so I knew in that moment, like, you know what, this could go pretty well. This could be special. This could be unique. And so, what I watched was that exactly that, guys, because if you've never been around somebody with a disability before, particularly someone with cerebral palsy, it can be uncomfortable. It is, right? And if, they're drooling, like how many people feel comfortable wiping up someone else's drool? And so what I watched though with our team was, which Coach Kanivi, we called him Coach K, would be out at the practice field. And you have these major Division I football players who are going up to him and they're pouring water into his mouth and they're massaging his jaw so that he can swallow it because he can't swallow on his own. Or they're taking towels and they're putting it over his head and they're cooling him off on hot days. Things like that I'd watched that just all of a sudden infiltrated our team and it infiltrated our culture was just this focus on taking care of each other because of who Coach Kanivi was. And it was like, he became obviously our cheerleader. And as much as I was the head of the football program and the voice of the football program, he in many respects was our leader.
Wow, that's so cool. I mean, what you just said right there about like the unselfishness and just like caring for each other. I talk a lot about this all the time in business because people are like always like, "Oh, you got to hire the A players, get the best guys." Like people talk about it all the time in sports, but like I think obviously you want great people on your team, but if you can have that culture and you all get along, really, really well, and you really care for each other, and then you have great coaching on top of that. Like, you don't have to be the most talented guys out there because you get to that, high school, the league, whatever. They're all really good. But, like, if you really care for each other and you want the best out of each other, that's what I think, like, separates, like, the good from the great right there. And, obviously, like, with what you just said, and we'll get into more, like, it sounds like you guys for sure had that.
Yeah, it was special. I mean, I always subscribe to the idea that culture beats talent, right? And then if you're able to combine both, then that's pretty unique and special. So, and that's that was part of what we were able to achieve with Frankie. Was so much of the focus came away from winning football games, came away from the scholarship offers, came away from individual goals, and the focus was on the preservation of our culture and protecting each other. And there were so many things that had happened along the way that just made it such a unique and special time. And I think that's how the book ended up coming about was, it's hard to see the picture when you're in the frame. And so for us, for those 4 years, we were just operating in this place that was like, to the outside world was so unique and so special. But to us, that was our standard operating procedure. That was our day to day. Like there was nothing unique. And so I think back to this day, Frankie's still one of my closest friends. I think back to like my interactions with Frankie. And the people who were outsiders would watch and go, "Oh my gosh, like this is crazy how they interact." But to me, it was just, once again, how we interact. And so there was nothing special or unique about it. And Frankie wrote about it in the book. He's got a voice in the book too. This was something he needed in his life, because what I was really focused on was our standards. And I made a very strategic choice to hold Frankie to the same standards that everyone else was held to. And he wrote that. I think that was really, really important for him, for me, for the program, because so much of his life, people had just been like, "Hey, we're happy you're here. and had given him like almost like in a way these like platitudes that like he didn't want or
Mm.
felt he deserved, and he wanted to earn it. And that's the beauty of who Frankie is. And so like I had him doing advanced scouting for us, and he wrote about this in the book. And so he gives me a scouting report. This is the first report he's ever given me. And here I am, second year as a head coach. I got a guy with cerebral palsy on my staff, right? And like, how do I manage and handle this? And I made a strategic choice. Like, this is how it's going to go. I'm going to keep the same standard as I would anyone else. And he gives me this advanced scouting report, and I handed it back to him, and I was like, this is not good enough. And I said, if you're going to do this, it needs to be done better. And I want you to take the approach that every time you do something for me, I want you to look at me like I'm Nick Saban. Like you're handing something to Nick Saban. Like, would you give this scouting report to Nick Saban? And I'll never forget. He shook his head no. And I said, okay, then don't give it to me. And but Frankie wrote this in the book that like working for me was one of the hardest things and the best things that has ever happened to him. And it was one of the hardest things because I had started holding him to a standard that I believed he was capable of, that maybe he didn't even believe he was capable of. But it was one of the best things that ever happened to him because I was holding him to a standard that he didn't even believe he was capable of. And so it helped him elevate and grow and get outside of his shell and his chair as well, because so much of his life, things were caught, not taught, right? Like his parents were amazing people. They wanted to empower him to do all these things, play basketball, go to school, go to Villanova, like amazing. But 90% of other people, and same thing with his brother and sister, but same 90% of the other people in his world were just like, let's protect this guy. We'll put him in a bubble, make sure he's okay. Like just clap for him when he rolls by. And like, that's not who he is. That's not what he wants. Like in so many ways, Frankie is just like you or I, like Nick or Justin or Chris. He's just trapped in his body. And he's smart, he's talented, he's funny. Like he's like all of the interests and things that we have, he has. But his umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck at birth, and there's nothing he can do about it. And so he's trapped. And I think that's one of the amazing things to me about him, and one of the biggest lessons and things I've taken away is if you or I or any of us on this podcast are struggling with an issue, there's a pretty good chance that we can take very proactive steps or make proactive choices to either change the issue, improve the issue, whatever it might be. Well, there's an empowerment in there. There's hope in that, right? A little bit of hope, and hope is important. But Frankie, there's no changing cerebral palsy. He goes to bed each day with cerebral palsy, and he wakes up each day with cerebral palsy. So the only thing he can control outside of that is his attitude. There's zero control over that circumstance. And so think about waking up every day knowing your circumstances aren't going to change, but the only thing that can is your attitude. And that's incredible to watch and witness and be a part of. Like that someone could be that strong in who they are, that have that much integrity in who they are, that the circumstances just do not matter to them, that their hope, their joy, all the things that we see from a distance are tied to a choice they make about how their attitude is going to be every single day. And from that, I really took away, and this was one of the chapters in the book that I learned, one of the 9 lessons I learned from Frankie, which is the only disability in life is a bad attitude. Like it's so true. And because I watched somebody with a major, major disability have an incredible attitude every single day. And it challenged me to wonder why if there's a day that goes by that I don't have a great attitude, then why is that the case?
Dude, I love that. I actually was thinking about this the other day, and like one of my favorite books is Man's Search for Meaning. That's basically like my biggest takeaway from that book is like, he was trapped in the Holocaust and he can't control that circumstance, but he's choosing to find meaning, in what he gets to define for himself, and ends up surviving and, writing his story, but he chooses to be in a good attitude and a good mood. And like, I think that's the greatest gift you can give yourself for sure. And, other people is just, choosing to be in a great mood. But I think especially in the Western culture, so many of us rely on like external circumstances to determine our mood. And yeah, I mean, that lesson of itself will literally, like, obviously it'll change your life, because when you're in a better mood, you make better decisions, and better decisions lead to better outcomes. But no, I love that, dude. That's a great, great lesson to learn, and to like constantly be aware of that. And I'm sure, like, not just for you, but the players on your team, everyone that probably interacted with Frankie too, like their lives have definitely been changed for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, there are going to be, trees whose shade Frankie will never sit because of, all the amazing things that he planted during his time there. But I would say there isn't a player in our program that wasn't touched by him. Like there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about him, and just like I said, he's one of my closest friends. And it's amazing to think, when you really break it down, like what one choice can do for someone. And, John talks about this, Ed Milet talks about this, like, but if you really think about that one choice, so like Frankie made a choice. He had the courage to make a choice because he had delusional belief in himself. He had the courage to make a choice that he actually wrote this in the book. He emailed every coach within a 50-mile radius of where he lived. And I was the only one who got back to him. And so then
Wow.
I made a choice. I made a choice to respond to that email instead of delete it. And then I made a choice to hire him. And now we think about those two choices that both he and I made. And I think about who I've become as a father, as a husband, as a man, as a friend, and what it's done for all the young men who've come through our program. And it was just about our one individual choices. And it's almost scary to think about what if I didn't have that moment of clarity to hire him, right? Like what if he didn't have the courage to make the choice to do that, right? And so it's life changing. It's life changing. And sometimes not sometimes, most of the time, we can't see the path. We don't understand what the path is, but we have to trust our gut and our instincts, right? And we talk a little bit about it in the book. Like one of the lessons is that courage is a muscle. You have to exercise it. And there's a line in the movie We Bought a Zoo, where it's also a book, but in the book and the movie, Matthew. Who's the guy, the Born Identity guy? I'm spacing his name right now.
I don't know.
The main actor, the guy who is from Good Will Hunting.
Oh, you're asking the wrong guy. I'm not the
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon, thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Matt Damon. Matt Damon says, all you need in life is just 20 seconds of insane courage, of just insane bravery. And I remember when I heard that for the first time, I was like, man, that's so true, right? Like if you just take 20 seconds to go, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go talk to that person. I'm going to send this email. I'm going to take this shot, whatever it is. Like it's just 20 seconds. It's not 5 minutes. And that 20 seconds can change your life. Like I'm sure it took 20 seconds for Frankie, maybe it took longer than 20 seconds, but it took 20 seconds to make a decision that he was going to send these emails out. Right. And like, be like, I'm a guy, like here I am, think about this. Like he has cerebral palsy, like he showed up. I didn't know he had cerebral palsy. He showed up and he acted like it was normal, right? Because he had that delusional belief in himself. And that was what was so important. He had that courage and that delusional belief in himself. And it's changed lives. It's saved lives. Like we had kids in our program who this football saved their life. And so because of him, it saved their lives.
That's powerful, man. I mean, when I first met Nick, and like it's sort of funny you talk about that one decision. I wanted to leave this conference where I met Nick at, and I was like, I gotta go, and then we met, and we became boys like super quick. But like when I met Nick, like that's like that theme that like was like him. He's like very courageous, that 20 seconds of courage. And even still to this day, like Nick's like we hype each other up and that stuff, but like that belief and like I mean that's basically what I'm taking away. It's like believe in yourself. That 20 seconds of I love that, dude. I've never heard that before. I've never seen that movie, and I want to go watch it now. But it's so true. It's just that 20 seconds, make the decision. Go for it. You don't got to overthink things. Trust your gut. I don't know. I mean, Nick, what are you thinking? Because I mean, I'm sure a lot of that resonates with you.
Yeah, I'm writing down kind of 3 takeaways for me, and one is delusional psychotic belief in yourself, 20 seconds of insane courage and culture, man. It's really cool to hear your team buy into that, because I'm a big believer in culture can beat talent, Frankie's just so courageous, man. And to hold him another standard, to hold him to the same standard as everybody else, I think is really, really cool. I'm sure you changed, his life and everybody, that was, in that school. Anybody who hears that story, I'm actually about to go buy your book. So.
No, this is such a cool story, man. Like, Chris, I'm really glad you wrote that, because I remember in the beginning of the book, you talked about it a little bit here. Like, you didn't want to write the book, or you had doubts. I mean, we can end it on that. Just like, if you have doubts about, whatever you want to do, writing a book, moving, quitting the job you don't like, whatever it is. Like, Chris, can you touch on that a little bit? Because I think we all can struggle with that at times, you
Yeah,
know?
for sure, man. I mean, look, I think the best people in the world struggle with self-talk, right? And I'm not claiming to be one of the best people in the world, but like, I wanted to write this book, and the voice that was in my head was saying like, why do you think people care about this story? Like, I had major, major, major imposter syndrome when I sat down to write this book. And John Gordon, we talked about him earlier. He has a saying that I love, which is, "You're allowed to talk to yourself, but you don't always have to listen to yourself." And so that was really important to me as I went through this. Was like, I just stopped listening to myself because like I can't I was talking to myself in such a negative way about like this story, like who was I writing it for, the audience, and all these other things. And what I made the choice to do, the courageous choice to do, was I stopped writing for an audience, and I just decided to write the truth. I just tried to write what was on my heart, and I just started to follow that courage and that heart and that instinct. And so, yeah, man. I mean, I think we all struggle with internally with with self belief sometimes, because there's so many reasons why, and like the world that we live in, where everyone has it's so noisy. The world we live in is so noisy, and everyone has a negative opinion. And sometimes I think it's so easy to focus on that negativity when really the foundation should be built on that delusional self belief. And so when I decided to write this book, I knew that the world needed to hear this message. It's not a football book. It's the medium is football, but the book is personal development. It's self belief. It's grit. It's toughness. It's courage. It's love. It's friendship. It's all those things wrapped into one. And it could, whether you're like a housewife or you're a football player, like this book's going to resonate. And so once again, I go back to the choice. Like, if I didn't write this book, that I made the choice to not write this book because I was scared, or I was afraid, or I felt insecure, or I felt unworthy to write it, then what would the reverberations of that choice be? Because now I'm receiving emails from people all over the country, all over the world, telling me how this book is impacting their life, how they're reading it in tears. People in the cerebral palsy community are reaching out to me, telling me how incredible this is. And so, I said to my wife the other day, like, I just feel so humbled that these words in this story that I got to live, that I had the privilege of living, that I had the privilege of sharing, is now able to positively impact others because I just was able to make a choice.
Well, dude, again, thank you for making the choice, because this was super fun for us. And, I loved you just, sharing all of that. And I'm sure, those listening definitely got a lot out of this. And I'm sure, many, many lives will be impacted, for a long, long time. So again, yeah, Chris, this was awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on here.
Yeah, thank you guys, man. It's just such a joy to share this story and this mission.
Awesome. Well, cool. We'll end it here. Boom.